Live from the Business RadioX studio inside Renaissance Bank, the bank that specializes in understanding you. It's time for North Fulton Business Radio.
And hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of North Fulton Business Radio. I'm John Ray, and folks, we are broadcasting from inside Renaissance Bank in beautiful Alpharetta. And if you are looking for the best bank in the United States, that's not my opinion. That's what a survey from Forbes magazine just said about Renaissance Bank. It's not just my opinion. It's theirs as well, and that's a pretty good one, folks. So if you're looking for a better experience for your business as it relates to your bank, maybe you ought to take a tip from Forbes magazine and come on over to Renaissance. Just go to renaissancebank.com and find their local office and give them a call. And I think you'll be glad you did. I know I certainly feel that way. Renaissance Bank, understanding you, member FDIC. And now I want to welcome Jonathan Wilson. Jonathan is the founder, CEO of FinCEN Report Company. Jonathan, welcome.
Good morning, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you. So let's talk about you and your company. How are you serving folks out there? Sure.
So our company is called the FinCEN Report Company, and you can find out about us at our website at FinCENReport.com. FinCEN is spelled FINCEN. And what we have is a software platform for helping companies file their beneficial ownership reports under the Corporate Transparency Act. And that's a new law. A lot of people have never heard of it before. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're here to talk about today, to educate people about what the new requirements are and how we can help them file these new government-mandated reports.
Sure. So let's talk about the Corporate Transparency Act first. Describe what that act is, what the I guess the implementation of it, what problem this law is trying to attack, what have you.
Sure. So the Corporate Transparency Act was adopted by Congress in December 2020. That was right after the presidential election and right before January 6th. And as a result, it was really missed by the media. It hasn't been covered much.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the Corporate Transparency Act, as its name suggests, it goes at this idea of corporate anonymity. So let's imagine today you're going to form a new corporation, the John Ray Corporation, and we're going to create it by filing a document with the Secretary of State. The information on that document is very limited. We're going to give the name of the corporation, the number of shares, who your registered agent is, but we're never going to say who John Ray is. We're not even going to say who the shareholders of the corporation are. Your corporation is going to be completely anonymous. Now, I said that the Corporate Transparency Act was intended by Congress to fight money laundering. Okay? Money laundering is something that criminals do in order to take their illegal money and put it into the financial system in a way that makes it look legitimate so that they can pay tax on it and then spend the money. The way criminals engage in money laundering is by using the concept of corporate anonymity. A criminal organization, imagine that you have one and they've got a big pile of money. How do they inject that into the financial system in order to make it look legitimate? Well, the most effective way and the most common way is through a process called daisy chaining. Okay, the illegal organization will create 3 corporations. Remember, they're all anonymous. No one knows who's sitting behind them. Corporation A, B, and C. They're going to take the illegal money. They're going to open a bank account for Corporation A. Then they're going to create a bank account for B, and they're going to transfer the money from A to B. Then they're going to form Corporation C, open a bank account for C, transfer the money from B to C. Now, they're going to dissolve corporations A and B and close those accounts. When the IRS knocks on the door and says, Corporation C, who are you and where did you get this money? Corporation C is going to say, well, we did consulting services for B. If the IRS ever goes to try to track down Corporation B and confirm the story, there's nobody left to talk to. Corporation B has been dissolved.
Right.
There's no record of who actually was the owner of B, so there's nobody left to talk to. And that is how most money laundering goes on today. According to one United Nations study, roughly 2 to 5% of global GDP is composed of illegally laundered illegal money. There was a situation just 20 years ago, which a guy by the name of Igor Putin, who is the first cousin of our old friend Vladimir Putin.
Okay.
I kid you not, successfully laundered money out of 19 sanctioned Russian banks through 732 legitimate U.S. and European banks for a total of $22 billion. So this is a huge problem. And unlike most countries in Western Europe, the United States is one of the few that still has a system of corporate anonymity. And as a result, some writers have called the United States the home of drug money, the home of money laundering, because we have so much of it going on in the United States because of this problem of anonymous corporations. So what the Corporate Transparency Act is a law that eliminates that anonymity for U.S. corporations.
So, and this law was obviously had bipartisan support because it got passed in a divided Congress. I think it was divided at that time and signed into law by President Trump, I guess. So,
well, no, it's even more bipartisan than that.
Okay.
President Trump vetoed the law, and Congress overcame his veto.
Okay. So, in other words, this law is not going anywhere. It's got massive support across both parties.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And in fact, one of the things we're wrestling with is that FinCEN, which is an agency of the U.S. Treasury Department, is the agency that is supposed to be implementing this law with new regulations. They haven't gotten their regulations out. They're a little bit behind the eight ball. Mm-hmm. As recently as last week, Senator Charles Grassley, a Republican, and Senator Sheldon Whitehorse, a Democrat, wrote a joint letter to the Senate Appropriations Committee saying we need to appropriate more money for FinCEN because we need to get them going on implementing the Corporate Transparency Act. So this thing does have bipartisan support.
Right. And we were talking a little bit before we came on the air. When a lot of business owners hear reporting company, they think public company. And that's not what you're talking about.
That's right. That's right. The law defines reporting company as any entity that is created by the filing of a document with the Secretary of State or any foreign company that is qualified to do business in the U.S. by the filing of a document with the Secretary of State. So anything that is involving a filing of a document with the Secretary of State, that's what gets you to a reporting company, in quotes, for Corporate Transparency Act purposes.
And just to be clear, because I know folks will hear this and think I'm trying to figure out a way to get out of this, it's the Secretary of State for any of the 50 states. And
that's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. It's by the fact that it's a federal law. It's not
right.
It's not at some federal level, right? If you filed a incorporation agreement or for your little single member LLC and you're the sole member, you're subject to it.
That's right. So this law applies to corporations that file their articles with the state, Secretary of State. It applies to an LLC that files articles of organization. Mm-hmm. Would apply to a limited partnership. What would it not apply to? In some states, a general partnership, which are pretty rare, can be created just by a private contract and without filing a document. In those states, and Georgia is one of those, a general partnership would not be covered by this law. Another example are trusts. In Georgia, you can create a trust with a simple trust indenture. That document doesn't get filed. So a Georgia general trust would not be subject to the law. However, in Delaware, there's a thing called a Delaware statutory trust that does have a document that would be a reporting company under the CTA. So yeah, this does cover, and the government has estimated it covers about 25 million companies in the United States.
So when we're talking, and again, this is terminology that the average private company, small business owner, small, medium-sized business owner, they're not familiar with. I mean, beneficial ownership. So what are we talking about there for those? What does that mean?
Exactly. So remember, we're fighting money laundering by building a database up in Washington of all the beneficial owners of every private company. So what's a beneficial owner? Well, I mentioned that we don't have regulations yet. We do have draft regulations. And according to the draft regulations, a beneficial owner is any individual, we're always talking about individuals now, who owns 25% or more of the reporting company or who otherwise exercises substantial control over the reporting company. So then you got to go look at the definition of substantial control. What is substantial control? Well, in the current draft, the substantial control is any person who is a senior officer of a corporation, who is a member of the board of directors of the corporation, or who has the ability to influence policy decisions of the corporation or appoint its officers or directors. So here's where it gets really complicated. I'm sure you've seen in LLC operating agreements. You'll have a document that says this is the operating agreement, and XYZ is the manager of the LLC, and the manager can do whatever it wants, provided, however, that the manager cannot do any one of the following things without the consent of this guy or these guys or a majority of the members or something like that. Okay. Basically, that group has a veto power over that list of major decisions. Well, if our LLC has a whole bunch of members and it says we can't do any of these things without the consent of member John Ray, well, John Ray just became a substantial owner of the company because you have that veto power. So you are now a beneficial owner by virtue of your veto power, even though your ownership is under 25%.
Right. Even though you've got a minority piece and you feel like you have no voice whatsoever, you're in the company affairs, you're still regarded by the United States Treasury as a beneficial owner.
That's right. And that's what's going to make this so complicated. So all these 25 million companies, many of which are mom and pop businesses, if there's a written operating agreement that gives one of the members a veto power, then that individual is going to get included as one of the beneficial owners, and they'll need to have their data included on the report that the LLC files with FinCEN.
Folks, we're here chatting with Jonathan Wilson, and Jonathan is founder and CEO of FinCEN Report Company. So you mentioned their data. Let's define what that is. What information am I going to have to disclose about myself personally, because maybe I'm an investor in a company or just because I've got my own LLC? That's
right. So for every reporting company that has to file, they have to file this same information for the company applicants and the beneficial owners. We'll put a pin in that word company applicants. We'll come back to that. For every beneficial owner, the company is going to have to file their full legal name, date of birth, home residential address, and a unique identifying number. The unique identifying number can be a driver's license or it can be a passport. Then depending on which number you use, you need to provide an image file of that document. So let's say it's your driver's license number and then an image file of your driver's license. Those 5 pieces of data need to get filed for every single beneficial owner.
Wow. I know chills are running up the spines of many that are listening to
and
this.
And they should be.
Yeah.
They should be.
Right. But this is going directly to the United States Treasury.
That's correct.
And so whose responsibility then is it to get all this information for a particular company?
Well, that's a great question. In theory, it is the company's obligation, but since all the beneficial owners are exercising substantial control over the company, over the reporting company, the individual beneficial owners are themselves going to be responsible. And that's actually a big responsibility. The law imposes a $500 per day fine for failing to get the report done correctly and on time. And if an individual intentionally files false information or intentionally refuses to file, that individual can be guilty of a felony. So this is a very serious law once it becomes active, once it's implemented by FinCEN.
Okay, let's get to that. That's where I was going. Thank you for that, teeing me up. Where are we with the status of the law, the regulation, and how to comply?
That's right. So this is a law. It was passed by Congress. It's not going anywhere, but nobody has to do anything just yet. No one's going to have to do anything until FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network of the U.S. Treasury Department, finalizes and publishes its regulations. Now, they have given us draft regulations. They came out in December of 21. They were open for comment, and then the comment period closed in February. The director of FinCEN testified before Congress just a few weeks ago that they're not really sure when they're going to get it done. They want to get it done soon. Congress members are writing them letters saying, hurry up and get going because we want to implement this law, but it hasn't happened yet. It could happen as early as later on here in 2022. It might be that they don't get this done until 2023. But once those regulations become effective, and I'll call that the effective date, that's when all the timing rules start to kick in. So on the day the rules become effective, every corporation and reporting company that already exists will have 1 year to file their first report. So it's going to be a mad dash. We said there are 25 million companies. That's 25 million companies are going to have 365 days to get their homework done. Where it's really going to be a problem is for all the newly formed companies, Because after the effective date of the regulations, every newly formed company has only 14 calendar days to get their first report done.
Oh, wow.
And that, as you know, is a huge change for deal lawyers.
Right.
Ordinarily, if you have a deal going, you get a term sheet, you start drafting things, you might go ahead and file all the articles for all the entities in advance, even before the deal is done.
Sure.
We won't be able to do that anymore. We're going to have to wait until the deal is done and the capitalization table is fully formed and we have everybody's data before we file those articles of organization, because we've only got 14 days to get the first report filed.
Oh, wow. So speaking of business lawyers, this law and really the outcome of this law, the upshot of this law, maybe it's what was the word to use, is going to be a surprise even to business lawyers who are well informed of what's going on, right?
That is true. That is true. Because remember, I said put a pin in it earlier about the company applicant.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you who the company applicant is. So let's say you're going to form a new corporation today and you hire me, Jonathan Wilson, as your lawyer. I hand the project off to one of my associates. They work on it. They hand the project off to the paralegal. They say, paralegal, please go file the Articles of Incorporation for Mr. Ray's new corporation with the Secretary of State. The company applicant is defined as the individual who files the Articles of Incorporation or who directs the filing of those articles. So for our new hypothetical corporation, who is our company applicant? Well, it's you, John Ray, because you told us to do it. Mm-hmm. It's me because you told me to do it, and I gave it to the associate. It's the associate because they worked on it and I asked them to work on it. And it's the paralegal because the paralegal took the document and actually caused it to be filed. So we've got 4 separate company applicants. Each of them are going to have to provide those 5 pieces of data: name, birth date, home address, driver's license, all that. And all of that data is going to have to be included in the beneficial ownership report for this new corporation that we just created for you. Well, how are we going to collaborate and share this data? Because the paralegal might not want to give you his or her birth date and home address. The associate might have moved off to work at another law firm. I might have lost contact with that person. How are we going to get their data? Well, that is what my company does. What we do is we allow individuals to create their own personal data lockers where they would include their 5 pieces of information. That data gets encrypted and stored on an Amazon Web Services server where it's encrypted, the same sort of encryption standard that banks like Renaissance Bank use when they form their own websites for doing online banking.
Sure.
That data is free, or that account for the individual is free. The data is encrypted and it's owned by them forever. They can change it whenever they want. They can delete it whenever they want. Now, let's imagine that the regulations have been implemented and your new corporation, the John Ray Corporation, is going to file its beneficial ownership report. The John Ray Corporation is going to open an account at FinCENReport.com. And you're going to say, okay, the company applicants are John Ray, and this is his address, Jonathan Wilson, and this is his email address, Jonathan's associate, that's their address, the paralegal, that's their address. You're going to input all that data into the John Ray Corporation account. The account is then going to message all of those company applicants by their email and say the John Ray Corporation wants to include your data in their beneficial ownership report. Will you consent? For those who consent, the data will be included in the report. It won't be visible to John Ray. So you're not going to know my home address. You're not going to know the home address of the paralegal or so on. But the data will be included in the report that gets electronically filed by my company with FinCEN. Mm-hmm. We're going to charge a subscription fee to the John Ray Corporation, but all the individuals involved, their data is stored securely for free.
And this would apply, I'm thinking about instances where you've got a limited partnership or something like that, where investors have K1s. Basically, if you're getting a K1, you're going to be subject to this. Is that right?
Almost certainly.
Yeah.
Almost certainly.
Right. So, again, it's piercing what's that investor thinks there is limited. Doesn't apply here. It does not apply here.
That's right. No, the government has the power to compel this data.
Right.
And where it really gets tricky are for the lawyers like me who do this on a daily basis. Let's imagine that you're a business lawyer. You may have filed articles for 300 or 400 companies. Mm-hmm. Well, your data is going to have to be included in the reports for those 300 or 400 companies. What are you going to do when those 300 or 400 clients call you up and ask for your driver's license and your home address? Well, the way you fix that is you create a free account at FinCENReport.com. You then tell all your clients to go there and to do their filings through that service as well. Right. And that allows you to share your data securely so that it's included in the report, but the actual data itself is not disseminated.
Wow. Jonathan Wilson, folks, delivering the good news from FinCEN Report Company. He's the founder and CEO. So talk about your stage of development here, Jonathan. I mean, I can imagine some folks are saying, well, how's everything ready to go for your company if the regulations haven't even been finalized?
Sure. So we've built out the software, and you can go to FinCENReport.com today, press on the button that says Get Started, and you can go create your free individual account. Okay, and we'll save that data. We're not going to use it for any other purpose. We're not going to spam you and try to sell you stuff. We don't do that. Because the regulations aren't implemented, you can't file a beneficial ownership report with FinCEN today. So your data is just going to sit there and nothing's going to happen to it. Once the regulations are finalized and it becomes time for your company to file their beneficial ownership report, they'll be able to create a company account and do that messaging we talked about, where you ask people to give their consent to have their data included. What you're doing is getting a heads up, really, on having all of your data organized and ready to go. What we're doing as a company is we're reaching out to business owners to tell them about this new law and what it means for them. We're also reaching out to lawyers and law firms,
right,
and explaining, goodness, you guys have a tsunami of data requests coming your way. You need to get organized in advance. And we're giving law firms the ability to put client corporation names and contact details into our database. We'll invite those folks to open their free personal accounts. And by doing that, they're preparing in advance to have the data ready to go, so that they're not going to face that tsunami of data requests that are going to overwhelm the corporate law departments at a lot of big law firms.
Yeah, for sure. And it sounds like the small or medium-sized business owner listening to this show should probably be in touch with their attorney if their attorney regularly files their renewal documents with their individual state, right? I mean, if they're doing that, then their attorney really needs to take the lead on this, right?
The attorney should, yes.
Yeah.
And what I would encourage business owners to do are really two things. Number one, ask your lawyer, what is your plan for how you're going to manage our data and how you're going to file our beneficial ownership report when the time comes? If they don't have a plan, I'd encourage them to go to FinCENReport.com and figure out their plan. Number two, private companies need to change their internal corporate governance to make sure that they have the paperwork in place to compel their investors to provide that data. You know, if you formed a company a few years ago and you got 20 shareholders, you probably have a subscription agreement, you issued shares of stock, but there's no contract that says that those shareholders have to give you their name and birth date and home address. You don't have any power to compel them.
Right.
And if they give you information that's incorrect and you get dinged as a consequence, you don't have any indemnification rights for that shareholder to compensate you for all the legal fees that you're going to pay fixing that problem.
Right.
So what you would do is enter into a shareholder agreement with all your shareholders so that they're obligated to give the data. Everybody agrees to keep it confidential. Everybody agrees to indemnify everybody else if they give the data incorrectly or inaccurately. So it's really a change in corporate governance is what this new law is compelling on so many U.S. companies.
Yeah, makes sense. So, Jonathan, I guess you've got a way for folks to really engage with you before kind of all this is finalized. And again, as you mentioned, it's going to the website and entering your own personal details.
That's right. Right. And anyone on planet Earth today can go to FinCENReport.com, click on the button that says Get Started, and create their own free personal account that will just contain their data. It'll be encrypted on Amazon Web Services servers, and we're not going to do anything with it. And that way they will be ready to go when the time comes so that they can collaborate securely with their business partners and help their companies file their reports.
And what will the companies that have to that use your service, have you developed pricing for them yet, or how does that work? Sure.
What we do is we sell an annual subscription to the company. Again, it's all free for the individuals.
Yeah.
One corporation with 20 owners. 20 owners have free accounts. Only the corporation pays. The corporation is going to pay a $99 annual subscription. That doesn't start until they file their first report. So all of the collaboration and messaging, that's all free until they actually get around to filing that first report. When they file the first report, we'll ask them to pay $99 for 1 year. That's going to cover that initial filing. It's also going to cover all of the subsequent amendments, because that's the one thing we haven't talked about yet. Because the government doesn't just want a database as of one point in time. They want a database that is accurate all times. So what they've done in the law,
right?
Okay, so we let's say we filed our first report. All 20 shareholders are there, name, birth date, all that stuff. It includes the driver's license, all 20 shareholders. Well, someone's going to renew the driver's license eventually, right? When they do, and that individual then uploads the new renewed driver's license to their individual personal account, what we'll do is we will notify every company that they're connected to. Mr. X just changed his driver's license. If you included that in your report, you need to amend your report. Do you want to amend it now? Yes, no. Press yes, and if you're a paying customer of FinCENReport.com, we will automatically file your amendment so that you're legal. Won't have to do anything else. And that will be covered with the 1 year subscription fee that you've already paid.
Wow. Sounds like a lot of value to me, folks. Jonathan Wilson with FinCEN Report Company. Jonathan, this has been great. And what vital information that I think our listeners need, and of course their businesses need. So let's really give them the most important information, which is how to find you if they've got more questions or other considerations for you.
Sure. And I'm happy to talk to folks. We also have a YouTube channel with instructional videos on how the law works. But the best way to get me is through the website, FinCEN Report.com, or my email address there, which is jwilson@FinCENReport.com. Just reach out there. We have a blog. I write on this topic almost every week, because there are still developments as the law is getting finalized in regulatory form. And stay up to date on it and reach out to us, and we're happy to help.
Jonathan Wilson, folks, founder, CEO of FinCEN Report Company. Jonathan, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me, John.
Absolutely. Hey, folks, just a quick reminder, if you are looking for a better solution for your corporate team building activity, one that does not involve the risk of sprained ankles and skinned up knees and what have you, then think about standing around a stainless steel table with seasoning meat and cutting up vegetables. Well, that's what they set up for you at A&S Culinary Concepts. They've got a really popular corporate team building effort there, in addition to the corporate catering and Big Green Egg boot camps and other activities that they have there. Andrew Traub and his team they're terrific, and I would encourage you to call Andrew at 678-336-9196 or go to their website, asculinaryconcepts.com, to learn more. And if you call, tell them we sent you. And folks, North Fulton Business Radio is on all the major podcast apps. We're at show number 460 or something like that. And we exist to highlight the great work business leaders, owners do. And here's a great example with Jonathan. We would love it if you would subscribe to the show, of course, but share it. If you've heard something here that makes you want to share the show, this is an episode where I really think you want to share it with your fellow business owners, then please do so. That helps us help celebrate and trumpet the great work that our business leaders that we feature on this show do. So we thank you in advance for helping us in that way. So for my guest, Jonathan Wilson, I'm John Ray. Join us next time here on North Fulton Business Radio.